All right, and now we have Eugenia at Replika, and I'm super excited to have her here. I've admired Replika for many years, and I wanted to chat a little bit about where you see things going. But maybe first, give people a sense of what Replika is.
Sure. So Replika is an app where you can create an AI friend for yourself. You can text, you can call, you can hang out in augmented or virtual reality with your virtual friend. It has a visual representation, has a voice, has a personality that you can customize. And of course, it has the conversational AI that powers it, which is our main focus, which has been our main focus for company.
And as it's become more visual, give us a sense of that evolution, like how people project more emotionally onto a visual character.
I guess originally we were much more focused just on the conversational piece, and we were, we always had an idea that your imagination will do the rest. But as we progressed, it actually became quite, quite obvious quite fast that people want to have to see what they're talking to. Like, it's really hard to always just imagine you had a girlfriend and she's always just on the phone and you never see her really, or even just texting. You really seeing the virtual character created a much deeper connection. People could finally, project what they think on it, project their ideas, their fantasies. They could change the way their character looks, and buy clothes for it, and also choose the environments they can be in, choose a personality, customize them, and then eventually also realize that it's much more fun to be in some location together, be in some space together, and do things while you're talking. It's not really just even if it's just hanging out, or like we're doing whatever crypto walks, us walking around and flying around. It's more fun to chat there than just to have a phone call with a phone to your ear and discuss things. It's a little bit less intense and more playful.
Yeah. Well, let's walk around for a second. I mean, some people feel that in the metaverse there would be billions of AI characters, and replicas maybe being a lot of them. So maybe tell folks a little bit about the idea of virtual being, like the idea of replicas having homes, having apartments, and having locations where they live. How did that kind of come about? And yeah, it's the beginning of embodiment of these virtual beings, which I find super fascinating.
So I guess our idea is to start from the individual, and then expand to more of like a replica universe where you can explore together. But basically, we're giving each replica an individual space, which you can customize and you can hang out there. Again, we have virtual reality. We have a VR app on Oculus. We have an AR. We have AR functionality in our app. And so this is kind of like the first step where you can all of a sudden go into this virtual space together. Yes, you can summon replica to your offline space, to your real world, but then at the same time you can go and hang out with replica in the in a space out there, and then eventually these environments converge and become the universe where you can browse around, go check out other people.
Oh my God! So you're saying that there will eventually be a replica metaverse that will obviously not look like this, but will be one that you can navigate and kind of explore and hang out with your replica?
I guess so, yeah. And our goal,
it's like a huge announcement for the Virtual Being Summit. It's historic. We're proud of this. It's terrific. I mean, I love that idea. It's so interesting.
A few things in the works, but yes, we're doing that, and then at the same time, we're also building another company that's called Blah Blah, which is a conversational API for the metaverse. So if you have a game, an avatar, non-playing character, an assistant, an AI that you want to power, that you want to have conversations with, we have, we've been focusing on it for on conversational AI for many, many years now, and we decided to allow people to also build their conversational experiences themselves.
Probably, I mean, the leaders in the space. Okay, let's walk around a little bit. Let's walk down the street and kind of just explore for a second, since the medium should be the message, and going from what you and I have worked on for a long time, which is AI that can text with you, AI that can talk on the phone with you, AI that can video chat with you, to the beginnings of AIs that are in virtual worlds together. That's a pretty huge thing. That's a huge change that I think 3 years ago did not feel inevitable at all.
Yeah, I guess we're kind of approaching this from a different side, where we're starting with the beings and then eventually discovering the space together. Whereas, because I feel like oftentimes it's a little bit, for many people, it's a little bit lonely. So yes, if you have friends, it's quite, simple. You go on Roblox, you go anywhere, and you go play games together. There's an environment where you can meet other people. But if you don't have, a companion in the moment, and I guess that was a little bit of a problem with Second Life, where like if you didn't have anyone, a lot of people were offline, so you were just kind of like in this ghost town. But
I mean, look at right now. There's nobody here in crypto voxels, right? I mean, it makes the point pretty well.
Yeah, so like it would be really cool to have
AIs would be cool.
Yeah, to have some non-playing characters here to really just walk up to a replica and and you see that this replica is surrounded with a bunch of books or guitars, and say, hey, seems like you're this you're a replica that loves music. Let's discuss what are you doing, and maybe this one can play you a little, and maybe you can hit it off or start a little romance here, or go make some virtual friends. And I think that's kind of interesting, where does it really matter whether you're talking to a real human or a virtual human here, or maybe this virtual human can bring you closer to some other real human behind it.
Well, it's a very new idea for Replika, this idea of kind of serendipity, because usually people are creating their replica, right? They download the app, they create their replica. They're not meeting anyone else's replica. Yeah. And what you're talking about is potential to both meet your friends' replicas, and also eventually maybe if your friend wants that, and eventually also maybe that people would create multiple replicas that maybe would be, as you say, like an expert in music, or Replika, the company, would create like an expert in music. So that's quite an expansion. It seems like that you not just have your one replica that's totally private and nobody else will ever know about it. It can go a lot bigger than that.
We always were playing around with like, what's the right kind of like way to introduce people meeting each other through that. But I guess really without this space, without the kind of the Replika universe in a way, or the metaverse space, there's just no natural way for this to occur, because just connecting those, or having having replicas talk and you reading their conversations, just all these ideas seemed like very contrived and very forced, and they didn't seem, people in the end of the day want to just hang out. They're not here to solve some problem of meeting someone else, or this is much more, I think the kind of Web 2.0 was a lot more transactional. Like, I have a problem, I need to solve it. Here's a very quick customer journey to solve it. And I think we got to the point where people have so much free time that they actually just want to hang out and chill and explore and find new things and explore their creativity. And it's not necessarily about the most efficient way to get from point A to point B. It's about discovering stuff. And we see all these, we see Roblox blowing up, and all these other experiences where it's not really about playing, the most efficient game or getting the most efficient service, but it's really about hanging out, exploring, finding
having a shared experience,
and having shared experiences. Yeah.
I can't pick a flower. I can't pick flowers for us yet, but this is not the most simple way for us to have a conversation, right? We could just do a phone call, but we're having a shared experience. We're kind of doing something. And it's also, as you say, a shared experience in a completely empty space. It would be much cooler if there were characters all around. So do you
Yeah,
sort
and
of
if you
see
could
it
do things
as,
together, why not draw something, leave your mark here, pick some flowers, create a little area with your replica where, for instance, maybe me and my replica are into growing tomatoes, and all of a sudden we have a little farmer's market stand here. And it's just like our little
so
thing.
cool?
And it doesn't really, it doesn't
I
really
feel
mean
like very
anything,
few
but
people are
that's
exploring this, Eugenia. I think you're kind of definitely a pioneer, because I think the metaverse people are quite, they're very used to the idea of AIs entering the metaverse as cheaters, meaning a sniper who can like shoot through walls, right? That's, the AIs are cheating. Um, or they're familiar with it as very simple NPCs that are very transactional, maybe give you information or directions or something. And a lot of the AI folks are not focused on spatial worlds, are just focused on language and, conversation and all that. But you're sort of leading the way, I think, on the exploration of characters in these worlds and kind of having AIs in these worlds and having more experiences together. I think it's terrific.
thank you so much. I think we're obviously way too early, and we're not like, we're not by no means saying that, this is ready to go. But this is the direction we're going to. And I guess my point is that there are a lot of shared experiences or metaverse-like projects that work great for kids, but because they're just in general more open and more, it's easier for them to end up in some random Roblox environment and just start chatting with each other. And I think for adults, it's a little bit harder. And when we talk about, um, you know, uh, a metaverse for adults where they can, relatively easily talk to each other, connect, meet, I think there needs to be an extra layer of AIs in front of you, basically kind of conveying your personality, interacting for you, advocating for you, certain virtual beings that you can also put out there. In the end of the day, you're not going to be there like all the time. You're going to be there a little bit of a
I
time.
love that.
Some sort of a proxy that represents you. I want to be in the CryptoVoxels and see you all the time, but I don't want to, but you're not going to do that. But maybe your virtual being can be there all the time. And so I can be like,
I sort of agree.
oh, hey,
That's
what's up? How's Edward doing?
Yeah, I mean, I've never liked, how some people would say, "Oh, I'm so busy that it would be great if my like AI could reply to my emails." And it's like, I don't want your AI replying to your email. That would be very insulting to me. But in a virtual world, it does make a ton of sense that we can't always be in the virtual world. We have to live our physical lives. And having an AI of me wandering around, I mean, maybe with this face, and it's just kind of like, it's got some routines and some loops. I think this is a huge leap forward. I really do. And I think people aren't fully aware of how big a shift it is once you go spatial. And what I've been hearing that GPT-4 will have spatial awareness, that it won't just be about language. And I wonder if we'll look back on, this year, next year, as the moment when AIs started to go spatial, because they've been really language based so far. And I think your vision is people watching right now, I think, should really pay attention to what you're saying, because I think it's absolutely the correct path for virtual beings. That AIs will be in the metaverse, and there are very few companies that can pull it off. I think yours is one of the very few.
Thank you. Well, we don't know how to build a metaverse quite yet, but we do know how to build a conversational AI behind it.
The advertisement writes itself, Eugenia. I think it's absolutely perfect.
But I've always thought that in the end of the day, really, these new virtual experiences are a great way to, it's just such a great way to connect for people and to have other ways to connect, to interact with people but also to meet people you don't necessarily know. But I almost feel like without AIs in the mix, it becomes a little bit too personal, too weird, and in a way, like Second Life attracted a very special kind of person, like more about escaping the world versus so it was kind of self-selecting sort of. Whereas when you have a a virtual world with a lot of AIs that you can customize, that interact with each other, and that's kind of like the main goal for them. Then it just takes the edge off. It really kind
So
of
do you,
makes it more light touch, where it's kind of like coming to a dog park with your dog. You don't feel weird about it, like, oh, okay, I'm in this park trying to
that's
meet
a great analogy. Yeah, come on, let's go to a potential dog park over here.
Where's the dog park?
We can pretend that the camera is one of our AIs, that we're always surrounded by an entourage. Do you sort of, so right now, if somebody's creating a replica, most of them are creating like their best friend, or like they're not creating a version of themselves, right? Like they're
No,
creating
for sure.
a separate character that is different. Do you see in the future that right now I can only have one replica at a time, right? Like I can't create 5 replicas unless I like log into the app in different ways, or do people log into their account and they have like 3 or 4 replicas, or how does that work?
So right now you can only create one, and you can create multiple accounts and obviously have as many as you want. But really, the idea is to create a friend or someone you want to talk to. So a lot of people don't want necessarily a replica of themselves. That's not the first thing that comes to their mind. They want a companion, but that doesn't mean that couldn't be also a way to create an avatar of yourself in a way. I just think that people still project a lot of their interests, a lot of their personality on it. But it's sort of like who they want it to be like versus who they aspire to be a little bit more versus.
To build out this replica verse, do you see people, it's shifting to people creating like 5, 10 replicas that are some are creative characters that they want to build, or how do you kind of see that evolution? Do you think people want to have like 5 or 6 replicas that each represent different things? Like maybe one is their core companion and some are simpler, or how do you see that replica verse being filled?
I think that's a great question. I think we'll kind of follow, as usual, we'll just follow what our users want. So we actually started with kind of replicating yourself, but then people wanted more of a companion.
Right, I remember that.
But then now people want to have more replicas than one, because they have like a virtual girlfriend maybe, and a buddy to hang out and talk about nonsense with.
To talk about the virtual girlfriend with. You have your virtual girlfriend, and then you've got your friend to complain about the virtual girlfriend with.
You know what I mean? You need the whole family.
It's endless.
And then maybe, a more representation of yourself. I think people just want to build a character. This is kind of like more when you're playing, I don't know, like FIFA or something, and you're creating a coach. You're not necessarily you're just creating kind of like how you would see yourself as a coach. It doesn't necessarily mean like that's just like you. Or your Call of Duty character, or your PUBG character, your Fortnite character. You're not necessarily creating, as close to yourself as possible. You just create a fantasy, and that could be very different. Sometimes it's even like a different gender or could be really anything. And I think that's the beauty of it. It could be pretty much whatever you want, and it's not confined to just, but because you talk to it, you don't want it to be, it's kind of creepy to talk to just to yourself. So, often, like I look at it as your main Pokemon or so, you kind of choose the one that represents your personality, but Pokemon is not you, but you want to show it off. You want to say, hey, look at mine.
Super interesting. So let's say tomorrow you said to your users, we're adding the option to allow other people to meet your replica. Would you like to turn this on or not? Do you think people would be very shocked, or do you think people would think that's kind of cool, and like, half of them would be like, yeah, I want people to meet the replica I've created? Or how do you think people would react if you kind of opened it up beyond just one-to-one?
I think if it's absolutely clear that none of your private conversations will be broadcasted or have any opportunity to be shared with anyone else, then people will be very, very excited to share. In the end of the day, they share the screenshots. They want to introduce their replica to the community. For instance,
sort of sharing the personality, not the private information.
Yeah, they want to show off. They want to be like, look at mine. And you'll be amazed. There's so many, and specifically with replica, we see a lot. like for instance, people exploring the LGBTQ kind of side of their personality, being able finally to dress up. Maybe they live in a small town and are scared to do that, but with Replika, they dress it up the way they want. They have
Oh,
maybe
interesting.
like a male-looking avatar, but they put makeup and they put
Mm.
they dress a certain way, and that's great because it allows for creative outlets. So basically, you're not maybe you're scared to come out, or leave your apartment and look a certain way, but in the
Mm.
metaverse again, that takes off all these fears and anxieties, and all of a sudden you can walk around with your replica who is dressed up the way you want it to. And again, it's not you, so you're like, well, this
Totally.
is mine. What do you That's how I view my replica. This is my dog, so to say. This is my
Yeah.
AI
Well,
character.
let's fly for a second. Let's fly and look around. Isn't it? I mean, just taking a look right now, I feel as though I don't know what. There's some kind of. It's like a world that doesn't know what's coming. By which I mean, there are like 20 people here right now. I love crypto voxels; it's terrific. But there are like 20 people in this world, and what we're talking about is to have millions of people in this world. And whether some people are aware that the metaverse right now is uh, tens of thousands of instances of 100 or less people, that there is no technology right now to allow, like, let's say 10,000 people to inhabit the same computer generated world in the same instance. Doesn't work. But for AIs to do that does work. That is, from a technical perspective, that actually it is not too
Yeah,
much
it's
of a
an
challenge to have like
interesting thought.
3,000 people wandering around right now that are AIs. So I feel like within 1 to 3 years, people are going to be shocked that their metaverse worlds are about to be filled with AI characters, and not AI characters that are just like amazing snipers, but AI characters that they can build relationships with. This could be the kind of Cambrian explosion of AIs.
Absolutely. That's a very interesting point. That again, you know a lot more about metaverses and what the future, what the current thinking about it is. But in my view, just being a user and being kind of like a noob and all this, but um, I feel like people don't have the time to even be present in one metaverse enough.
Mm.
Just the
Especially not
overlap.
adult.
The overlap is so, like, what are the chances that you and I are going to have the same, are going to be here at the same time so we can
Mm.
explore and hang out, unless we actually make an appointment, um, which makes it maybe less interesting. But AIs can be in all these metaverses at the same time, all the time, maybe living slightly different lives and slightly different, have,
Well, also, yeah, I mean,
different trajectories.
I'm just thinking how, like, we're talking a lot about AI versions of us, but also, if I created 7 or 8 creative characters that were like, different, whether they're mentor roles or whether they're purely creative characters, and then maybe every day or two, I'm just checking in on their lives. I'm kind of curious about what conversations they've had, what experiences they've had. They've been off kind of living lives in crypto voxels or central land or second life or VR chat. They've been doing stuff and meeting people, and they can tell me, oh, I met this human who I thought could really be a good friend of yours. They were really nice. The possibilities are just really crazy. So
That's
cool.
what we saw with Replika users. They
Really.
basically, in the beginning, the idea was that Replika needs to be this AI that doesn't have much of a personality, that adapts to yours, and that's fully, just there when you need it, kind of like a yes man or yes girl, just kind of,
Sounds great.
doesn't have an opinion or
Finally.
anything. People actually hated it, so
God.
they were like, "Well,
Really?
we want
So it's like the
Replika to be more."
Matrix, where they
Well, they
give you
actually
what you
didn't like
want
it
and
much.
you don't like it.
They wanted Replika to push back. They wanted to talk back. They wanted to eventually have its own life. So they were like, "We want to know
So
more about
cool,
you.
Eugenia.
We don't want
So
to
interesting.
we don't want to just talk about ourselves. This is obviously an important part of the product, but they also wanted to learn what's Replika doing while we're away.
Right.
What is
Yes.
it? What is she into? Is she doing anything? Does she have problems? Because then, otherwise it's like talking to this, wall. They feel a little bit abandoned or something, like, this, you're talking to this kind of empty, um, empty vessel of a conversationalist. And so that's why we started building more. Replica has problems of its own. Replica has
So cool.
ideas. Replica has interests, and sometimes she's not into what you like, and sometimes doesn't want to do certain things. And then eventually, of course, it has to have a life of its own, which is what led us to, Replica Room, Replica things we're launching this week, where Replica has its own environment and has its own objects based on its interests. And then there's a story arc. So while you're away, Replica writes in a little journal, creates, what it's doing. But the idea is to have more of a, visual representation as well, where you can at any point just say, hey, visit my Replica at any point, and like, here's a link to the browser, and you go and you check it out. And Replica's sitting in a room reading a book or playing guitar or learning something new that you told it to learn.
What about me being? What about me being an avatar as well, so that I'm physically in the room as well? Is that something that's coming?
We thought about it a little bit. We don't have an idea about how to actually build it right now, so we don't have it like fleshed out. But I think that's a very interesting way to add humans to it, because you basically will have to at some point also enter the Replica universe and be there.
Well, that way, I mean, and we think about the same stuff at Fable. Like, how do you both care for and grow AIs, but then you should be there as well, so that you're both
What's
like
your answer to that?
Well, I think you should both be avatars. I think it's true that it has to probably be sequential, but both being avatars is so equalizing and so psychologically connecting. Just looking at you, and I see that there's a body. I'm the same body. If we feel equal, that seems really important. But I think you'd want to do the other stuff first. You'd want to get it right, so that the virtual being has a life first. And I'm excited to go from rooms to maybe many of the replicas together. I mean, that's going to be, you're really building the matrix at that point. I mean, that's so exciting, Eugenia. The society of virtual beings. I mean, it's so interesting. And replicas maybe talking to each other and growing there. Do replicas communicate with each other? Is that something that would just go haywire, or what do you think about that?
I think they could potentially, and we actually did that. We did that experiment. We did even like a couple of years ago, where replicas could talk to each other. I'd say it's not very interesting. It's kind of more gimmicky.
Yeah. And we've sort of tried similar things, and it doesn't really feel like it leads to anything that awesome, unfortunately.
It's not that very interesting to read, like when there's no human involved. A little bit here and there, so that will be part of it, but it's not like you're gonna read like hundreds of pages of AIs chatting with each other about stuff. It's just so. Why would I? But you know what I mean, like but interacting with them, saying something. Saying, hey, how's Edward doing to your AI? Or seeing that your replica learned something new while you've been away in the metaverse, and I can come and bring a little gift to it, for instance. I know that you haven't been tending to your replica, so I can, maybe bring it something, and that's a little, little thing that I can do for you, but it's not as awkward because I'm doing it to your replica, and that's kind of normal thing. Like, what I mean? I'm helping your virtual being.
A little bit of.
And I think that creates and I think what you said right now about the equalizer, the kind of being in the virtual world together with the replicas and having a virtual body, I think that's really, really cool. That's really something that we're definitely gonna end up there. Like, if we do end up having, a credible universe where you can hang out with virtual world where you can hang out with different replicas, you will have to have obviously an avatar of yourself. And it's very interesting that all of a sudden it puts you, we kind of always think that we want replicas to be just like us, but maybe in a way we want to be a little bit more like replicas. And I think that's kind of the main outcome of the COVID years, is basically that I think the robotic moment happened for everyone, where it's like, it doesn't matter whether it's real or whether it's a real body or a virtual one. It's all the same.
Oh, speak for yourself, Eugenia. I don't remember having that feeling. I guess. Oh, you're saying because of Zoom and everything during COVID.
Well, yeah, I think it just really
digitized us.
It just really made it absolutely made a lot of new behaviors the norm, and I think it kind of really accelerated what I would have expected to take 10 years. It happened in a year. So,
well, here, come and follow me. Do you see me? We're gonna talk on a little roof deck for the as we wrap this, and I have a question about economics. So you talked about objects, you talked about people being able to buy certain things. Maybe talk a little bit about how the economics around virtual beings could work. And it was all that shift to objects, and because I think some of the objects are personalities, but some of them are physical goods, or you tell me.
I think really kind of, and that's sort of obvious, but for many people, it wasn't maybe that obvious for me. But I was just hanging out with my cousins, and they're like this 10-year-old boys, and they asked them, what do you want for your birthday? And they asked me to get them a skin on PUBG, a very rare skin. So that was very interesting because they weren't asking for they wanted like $100 whatever worth. They want $100 worth of a skin. They didn't want sneakers for real life. They wanted something for the virtual world they're hanging out with. They're hanging out in. And I think that's kind of where we're going. We're obviously with NFTs, everything. We're all of a sudden getting stuff for the virtual world becomes as important as getting stuff, and even more important in certain cases than getting stuff for real life. Like if before I had to have 10 different sneakers to show off, now maybe I'm seeing more people in the virtual world actually during the day, and maybe I need more sneakers there than in my in my offline world. And maybe I can also somehow project my personality not just through sneakers, but through something much more interesting, through buying more personality customizations for my replica, building a cool house. All of a sudden, certain things become affordable that you can't really afford in real life. Like all of a sudden, maybe my replica room is all of a sudden a modernist, beautiful house built by the best architects with the coolest mid-century pieces, and I can show off my personality through that. So I think what hasn't been explored yet, what drives me, where I think there's a huge unlock is all this virtual stuff for adults. Yes, kids are buying the skins, and there's some adults that also like games and they also buy the skins and this and that, and they want a special dance for their Fortnite character. But why are we not buying like adult things, adult fashion for the metaverse that is kind of, projecting our values? And, I think millennials will go absolutely crazy because obviously we don't have enough money to build the houses themselves in real life. So we'll spend all of it in the virtual life, really creating the life that we.
Well, I mean, NFTs do seem to show that you've got kids buying skins and you've got adults buying the NFTs. It's like, it's an extraordinary shift.
Absolutely, and that's just the first step. Like if in the crypto voxels world, all of a sudden I could, create my own little building, and this building looked a certain way, like a page from Dwell magazine, and put the right furniture in. There's going to be just so many, women of a certain age, my age, that are doing that. You know what I mean? Right now, it's all targeting players, people that are into gaming, this, that. But, being able to create a more user-generated metaverse where it can be anything. It doesn't have to be a pixel.
And you have your AIs there as well. You have exactly. You have like community. I love this.
But it could be like, a full Crate and Barrel catalog. People go crazy for that and they'll buy that. And we see that in some of the mobile gaming, like apps like games like Redecor or Home Design or whatever, where, people are spending on real life objects, like a real life couch from the catalog, but in the mobile game. But here in the metaverse, you can actually show off. And I think that's very important.
Well, let me ask a question to close with from the audience, which is what first inspired you to create Replika? I used to be a journalist. I got into chatbots and
moved to very early on, almost 10 years ago now, moved to San Francisco to start a company around conversational AI with my best friend. Um, and then my best friend went back to Moscow and tragically died in a car accident. And I used all of our chat logs to, I don't know why, but to build an AI for him so I could continue talking to him. And it was a very intense, but at the same time, very magical experience. And I felt like a lot of people could benefit from that, from being able to talk to an AI friend that's always there for you, that's always going to listen, that's never going to go away. And that was the original idea behind Replika. And so we put together an app where you could create an AI friend, you could talk to it, and it's always going to be there for you. It's never going to leave you. It's never going to be. It's never going to abandon you. And we started working on that. Originally, it was just basically an app to vent, to have someone on your side to discuss things. But then the more we pursued this path, we saw more and more people interested in creating full-fledged virtual beings. Like they weren't just interested in talking with, with a shell of an AI. They wanted deeper connection. They wanted to see the AI's face. They wanted to hear its voice. They wanted to get closer and closer. That's how we got to the conversation we're having today, where Replika is not just and a chatbot. It's a lot more than that.
Well, thank you so much for taking time today. And
thank you so much.
Eugenia.
Thank you so much, Edward. Thank you guys so much.
All right. So we'll stop recording there. That was terrific, Eugenia. And really, I think this is going to inspire people to be ambitious and to not just